When we left off last week, it looked like the bourgeoisie, I should say, are firmly in control. And they've got cultural hegemony on their side. They've got all of that superstructure of society, politics, government, religion. Everything supports the capitalist mode of production, of which the bourgeoisie are in control. But they really aren't the masters of their own destiny as we might imagine. And that is because the competition built into the capitalist system, right, weakens it. And it is part of what Marx would refer to as its inherent contradictions. And the way this story works, to compete with each other, the capitalists have to incessantly cut their costs, wages, materials, all of those things. And to do this, they automate production, as we see here symbolized by the robotic arm. I suppose it's either a plasma cutter or a welder. In any case, you're replacing a human with a machine. And you do this so that you can lay off members of the proletariat, the proletarians, or the workers. But the problem is, as more and more of these proletarians become unemployed as part of this drive to cut costs, there aren't as many consumers to buy what the capitalists are producing. And so the bourgeoisie tried to compensate for this by cutting costs even more, which of course means more automation, more unemployment. And this creates what Marx calls a vicious circle, right, of increased unemployment, lack of consumption, and increased cost cutting. And this vicious circle of cost cutting and increased unemployment will, according to Marxist theory, reach call it a tipping point or a critical mass. And at that point, revolution becomes the result. It is illustrated in these propaganda paintings, and say what you will about the commies, they definitely understood and understand the value of stirring propaganda. All right. Now, my editorializing aside, right, the proletariat, as a result of this revolution, takes power. Right? They overthrow the capitalist overlords and seize control. And in Marxist theory, their next step is to create a dictatorship of the proletariat. Right? So the proletariat are going to be in charge in an authoritarian type of government. But the important thing to understand, as unpleasant as this may sound for the Marxists, is that it is temporary. And what this dictatorship will do is it will reorder society along communist lines, and it will instill in people this essential value from each according to his ability. And so you should produce what you are able to do through your talents, your gifts, your hard work, your able-bodiedness. And so again, you should give according to your ability, and then to each will be given, right, according to that person's need. So that's based on maybe how large your family is, for example. And so if a person is a factory worker here, symbolized in the Soviet Union, and they may be responsible for working a lot to produce more tractors for the farmers to use. And the farmers need those tractors, but the farmers are then also supposed to use those tractors to produce food for the families of the urban working class. And so the idea here is just you'll take what you need and you'll give what you can. And according to Marxist theory, what will happen over time as this new value is successfully inculcated in the population is that there will be an evolution of humankind, the human condition, and human nature to what is referred to by Marx as the new man. And this new man will have bought into that value, will no longer be forced to give according to his ability and receive only according to need. And the government will become unnecessary. And at that point, it will vaporize, fade into the ether, boil away like a mist on a sunny spring morning. Choose your rosy Marxist metaphor for this, but the government disappears because it becomes unnecessary. Human nature no longer requires it due to this positive kind of utopian evolution. But you might have already noticed there's something missing here, and especially as you are a classroom of American students, what about the middle class? The middle class is essential in any discussion of America because, depending on your survey analysis, as many as 70%, that's more than 2 out of every 3 Americans, self-identify as members of the middle class. Well, they're not missing from Marxist theory. They are what's called the petit bourgeoisie. That often is translated to the petite bourgeoisie or the petty bourgeoisie. And again, this is the middle class. Sometimes, depending on the theory, often includes the lower middle class. Now, these people are also labor. And they work, they earn wages, they may work for the capitalists. We might be talking about a white-collar office worker, a secretary, administrative assistant. However, they are labor, but they're different from the standard proletariat of the working class because they live a fairly comfortable, secure life. And because of this comfort, they act as a buffer between, on the one hand, the bourgeoisie at the top, right, that exploit everybody else, right, including the petite bourgeoisie, but also at the bottom, the proletariat. They end up defending capitalism, right? Because while they're exploited, they're still not as exploited as the proletariat, and they live this comfortable life. And so I would fall into this category of the petite bourgeoisie. I am a school teacher. Right? Now, I'm exploited by the capitalist class. Right? I'm exploited by management. I work for a wage. But let's face it, I'm a teacher. I'm also fairly comfortable. Right? I'm not breaking my back to work. Right? I can expect a decent retirement when I have served my time. And so I, according to Marxist theory, will end up defending capitalism. And if you look around at how public education is organized, it kind of does. We have business classes here. We teach vocational things so that students can go out and become carpenters and machinists and auto mechanics and join the proletariat, or for some of them, the petite bourgeoisie. But we end up teaching you things that defend the system. Now, I'm not calling for revolution, and I'm not saying we're wrong, but Marxist theory explains the role I play in this system. And it's also captured by this political cartoon here where the petite bourgeoisie, the middle class, really they could choose to support the proletarian revolution, but because of their false consciousness, and this is something we kind of briefly alluded to last time, right, they end up picking what's referred to in this cartoon as sellout reformism, making modest changes on the margin that might soften the sharp edge of capitalism, but don't really get rid of the exploitation and just prop up the system. All right, now that's where we're going to stop. That will leave you with the next part of the assignment, which you will see in the pages that is linked with this presentation. All right, well, thank you guys. I will see you back in class on Wednesday. Again, I'm not out of the building. If you need something, just send me an email. All right, see you Wednesday.